Well, you might not know this about me, but before I felt the calling to be a pastor, I actually wanted to be a firefighter. And this all started back when I was in high school. I took an elective ROP firefighting class. And it was a lot of fun. I had a bunch of friends in there, and we enjoyed our time in that class, and it really motivated me to become a firefighter. But there was one week in particular that we all dreaded coming up. It was a week of physical challenges that were meant to prepare us for the physical components of being a firefighter. And the worst of these challenges was something called the hose drag. The hose drag was this absolutely grueling activity that you had to go into. I remember it being my turn, this physical challenge that was just daunting, that just made people get so exhausted that they felt like they needed to throw up right on the spot. And I started this challenge, and I was 30 seconds in, which is only maybe a quarter or so of the way through this challenge, and I was just done physically. My arms, my hands were tired, my face was red, my heart was beating out of my chest. I was absolutely exhausted. I just wanted to call it quits, give up, and collapse on the asphalt. And even though that's what I wanted to do, I didn't do that. I didn't give up. I kept going. The reason why I was able to keep going wasn't because I really wanted to complete the challenge, or it wasn't because of any desire of mine to have people like me or think I did a good job. It wasn't anything that was coming from inside of myself. The way I was able to complete this challenge was because I looked around and there were other people that were going with it through me. You see, I looked next to me, and there was a guy in my class who was doing the challenge at the same time as me, and he looked like he was struggling in the same exact way that I was. His face was red. He looked like he was in pain. He looked like he was going to throw up, but he kept going. And that encouraged me and motivated me to continue through this challenge and through this struggle. And it wasn't just that. I had a whole class surrounding me, cheering me on, people who had just completed this challenge and got through the other side, and people who had not yet done it, who were about to step up to the plate and do it themselves, cheering me on to get to the end. You see, in the midst of this struggle, this challenge, the thing that got me through was those people that were around me, motivating me and encouraging me to keep going. And that's really what we need to keep going as well. We need people to keep pushing us forward, keep encouraging us and pushing us on as we go through this challenge. You know, it's been a few weeks now of this crisis, of this coronavirus thing that we are going through, and I don't know where you're at. Maybe you're doing okay. Maybe you're feeling good. Maybe you're a bit weary. Maybe you're struggling a bit through this. Maybe you've figured out how to kind of live normal life, and maybe you're enjoying this. But I'm sure everyone at some point during this season is going to struggle with what we're going through right now. Struggling in our innermost being, in our soul, not being able to be with normal people, not being able to go into the office, not being able to give friends and family even hugs and enjoy the company of other people, not being able to gather together as a church. At some point, we're going to face the struggle of this challenge. And what we need to get through this challenge is those other people around us to lift us up, to encourage us, and to motivate us to keep going through the struggle. And so that's what Pastor Mike talked about this weekend in his sermon, is the need for the church to come around one another and support one another. And he gave us a lot of great ways to think through that. So what I want to do today is I want to give you a few simple application points for you to think about how to do this in the context of this ministry, in the context of your groups in Alliance, in the context of our church. How is it that we can be better about lifting one another up, encouraging one another, and bearing one another's burdens? Well, here's the first thing that I think is so simple that Pastor Mike talked about, but I really want to push and challenge every single person watching this to do this. And this is simple. You need to reach out to other people in your life, other people in your group, other people in this ministry, other people in the church. You need to reach out. So if you're doing well, If you're doing okay through this season, you've got to know that there are other people that you know in your life that are not doing okay. I was laughing the other day. My wife, if you don't know, is an extrovert. She's a people person. She likes to be around people. And she, of course, was scrolling through coronavirus memes, as we all do, and showed me one that said, hey, introverted people, your extroverted friends are out there and they are not okay. And it was this funny thing that she was showing me because she's such an extrovert. She needs people to feel okay. So if you're sitting at home and you're like, hey, this isn't that bad. I'm doing okay and I'm not struggling through this. You need to be aware that there are people who are struggling. So you need to take that responsibility to reach out to those people. Now, maybe you're not doing okay. Maybe you're struggling with this whole thing. You're starting to grow weary in your spirit. You also need to reach out to other people to encourage them. Just like the person that's doing well can uplift someone that's not, you, even though you're not doing well, can uplift someone else. The great thing about being sacrificial and reaching out and caring and serving another person, even via phone call or text message, is that will take the focus off of yourself and off of the thing you're struggling with. And as you put that care and love into another person, you yourself can be encouraged. And so you need to reach out. Whether you're doing well or not doing well, you need to reach out. But I also want to say this. If you're not doing well, if you feel like you're really struggling through this season, you also need to reach out and ask for help. There's a lot of people in the Christian community that think that the right thing to do is just to suffer in silence, to bear their own burdens. But that's not what we're called to do, right? Galatians 6 tells us that we are to bear one another's burdens. And that's not just people going out and seeking others to care for burdens, but you need to be willing and open to express and ask for help when you are carrying a burden, to allow your brothers and sisters in Christ to do what they're biblically called to do, to carry your burdens with you. So if you are struggling during this season, do not hesitate to ask for help, to reach out, to tell people, hey, I'm struggling during this time. I really could use some prayer. I really could use some encouragement. Maybe we can talk on the phone once a week. I just need some more interaction. Can we do a Zoom call? Can we do something online that would encourage our spirits? We've got things that we've got set up, like our groups, that if you're not plugging into every week, you need to plug into so you can get that encouragement. Ask for that help. That's an important thing for you to do. We've even got an Alliance Hangout that we're doing every Tuesday night for you to gather together, and we just have fun and talk and play with our virtual backgrounds so that we can just encourage and enjoy our time together that is so needed during this time. So first thing is this. One of the things that we need to do is we need to reach out. The next thing is this. As you're reaching out, and as people are reaching out to you, you need to be honest. You need to be honest about where you're at in this whole thing. I think the tendency in the church is so often to have the I'm great mentality, that everything is fine, everything is dandy, everything is exactly the way you want it to be, and you are great. And I have a hard time believing that that's really the case, because I don't know about you, but I'm not always great. I'm okay, I'm good even, I'm fine, but I'm not always great. I think we need to be honest when we approach the way that we're feeling and thinking and the way we're processing all that's going on right now with a lot of honesty. Now, obviously, the first thing that we need to be honest about is being honest with God. We need to make sure that we are being honest in our prayer life and telling God how we feel. I think of David and how many times he cried out to God with honesty, saying, restore the joy of my salvation. He wouldn't say that if it wasn't for the fact that he wasn't feeling joyful. He wasn't rejoicing in his salvation that moment. He was languishing in his spirit. He was downcast. He was distraught. How many times does he say that? I'm downcast. Why are you downcast, oh my soul? That we need to be honest when we go to God in prayer, but we also need to be honest with others. And what I'm not saying is we don't want people walking around somber in their face in the way that they look. We don't want people walking around with their faces sad with frowns on because you're having a little bit of a struggle. But I do think it's important when you connect with certain people that you're able to simply say, hey, thank you for reaching out. I am having a hard time with this. I am struggling. Or if you're doing well, to say that and say, yeah, I'm doing well. I wasn't doing well a few weeks ago, or I'm not sure how the next 2 weeks are going to go. There's something about just being authentic in the way that we respond to this crisis with one another that I think is naturally encouraging for one another. We need to do that work of bearing one another's burdens, not only reaching out, but now being honest with others. I want to read this one particular passage in 2 Corinthians. It says this, it said, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our affliction, so that," right? The reason why God comforts us, there's a purpose behind that, is so that we may be able to comfort those who are in any affliction with the comfort that we ourselves are comforted by God. It's this cyclical pattern that you see where when someone is struggling and they need comfort, they need the peace of God, they need to be encouraged in their own spirit, that the way in which God brings that about and the way in which God comforts people is by using other people who they themselves have been comforted. And that just keeps going and going and going. And so as we are reaching out and honest with one another, we need to make sure that we are doing the work that we're called to do, offering the comfort of God to others, the fact that it's going to be okay because God is sovereign in the midst of this whole thing. How can I pray for you? How can I encourage you? How are you doing with this? How can I come alongside of you? Really reaching out, caring, and being honest. Here's one more thing I want you to think of, and I want to illustrate it this way. When I was in my church up in Lake Arrowhead, I was a brand new believer, and I struggled with this a little bit because I would always walk into church on Sunday morning and I'd go around and I'd say hi to people, and I'd say, "How are you doing?" And people would look at me and say, "I'm great. I'm doing great. How are you?" And I kind of got used to the culture of that whole thing where people would just walk around and say, I'm great, I'm so good," big smiles on the face, praise the Lord, that whole kind of thing. And I started to do it too. And there was a season, though, that I went through where I wasn't great. I wasn't good. I was struggling in my spirit. I felt like I had started to fall back into some sins that I had previously felt like I was free from in the very beginning of my faith, and I just didn't know what to do, and I was downcast and I was struggling. And so I went to church on a Sunday morning and was shaking hands with people, and they said, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Not good." And I'll never forget the reaction that I got from a few of the people that I told that to. They looked at me like I was some sort of heretic, or that there was something wrong with me because I didn't say what the culturally acceptable thing was, which is, "I'm great, it's the Lord's Day, I'm happy, I'm good." I wasn't okay, and I said that. And those people weren't ready or willing or able to respond rightly to me. So here's the thing is what I'm saying in this. I'm not saying this to condemn any of those people. I get that there can be a cultural dynamic in a church, but if you're hurting, you need to be willing to give encouragement, but you also need to be willing to receive encouragement. You can't just sit in the state that you're in, struggling in your own soul and just complaining about it. If someone is there and they want to give you some truth, they want to point you to what is good and right, you need to be able to first receive it for yourself. And then you need to be willing to give it. If someone says that they're struggling, if someone says that they need help and they need some encouragement, you need to be able to jump on that and give them the encouragement that they need. So here's what I want you to do this week. I'm going to give you a very specific application around these three things that I talked about: reaching out, being honest, and being willing to give and receive encouragement. I want every single person to plan and to actually do this. Reach out to 6 people this week. 6 people is what I'm asking. And I'm going to say this. I want 3 of those people to be in Alliance, whether that's in your particular small group or outside of our small group, that you pick 3 people within this ministry and you reach out to them. And your goal is to reach out, check in how they're doing, care for them spiritually, see if they have any physical or spiritual needs, figure out what you could be praying for them for, be honest with them, tell them how you're struggling, and mutually encourage one another. If every single person would do that this week, then we would all touch each person in the ministry with some sort of encouragement, and we would build one another up so that we can get through this. So that's what I'm challenging you to do this week, to reach out to 6 people, 3 within Alliance, and 3 can be outside of Alliance, whether that's in your workplace or in your family or in your home or whatever that is. Pick 3 people you know in Alliance and 3 people outside, and let's do this work of building up the body of Christ together and getting that encouragement that we need this week.